The Lower Nicola Indian Band is a proud and strong Nakatamuk community that has occupied and lived on their own lands in the central interior of British Columbia since time immemorial. On Friday, November 14th, NEB community members, leaders, and elders traveled together to Kamloops to present to the National Energy Board with regards to the proposed expansion of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which would run through their territory. This was an opportunity for band representatives to present their oral traditional history and explain to the NEB board and Kinder Morgan representatives how this pipeline would impact both their traditional and also current way of living. It is argued that the National Energy Board hearing process is designed to favor proponent companies like Kinder Morgan. Elders may vote in Vonnet Hall. Chief Aaron Sam and Councillor Nicholas Peterson offered messages that were a piece of each of their hearts and represented the band as a unified voice of strength and ensured that the LNIB voices were heard. The hearings began with a prayer from the band's eldest of elders, May Vote, who offered a prayer to help guide them through the process. This was followed by LNIB band members offering a traditional song and drumming before the oral evidence hearing began. LNIB respected elder Vonnet Hall shared stories that demonstrated a strong connection to the land.
There is a legend that we have that ties us with everything on this land. Before the people came, the Creator gathered all the animals and the plants and told them there's going to be people. Going to be human beings, and they don't know anything. So the four-legged animal says, we promise to give ourselves, we'll sacrifice ourselves for their nourishment. Our plants, the plants says, we promise that we will we will give them of ourselves for medicine. And then one person says, well, okay, so we promise all this, what are they going to promise us when they get here? So he came back and he says, those people promise to look after you. All the animals, the water, that's our job. By God, you guys make it very difficult for us.
Councillor Nicholas Peterson spoke after Vonnet. Nicholas began speaking and reaffirmed many of Vonnet's words regarding the importance of the connection to their land. Looking out over the audience, many members in attendance were wearing I Eat Fish t-shirts, a sign of solidarity with other bands and nations going through the same process. But it became apparent through their presentation that LNIB membership does not just eat fish, but in fact they are fish, as one of the drummers pointed out, and it was reiterated throughout the presentation, reaffirming the band's strong connection to the land and natural resources.
As our drummer spoke, it's not just I eat fish, I am fish.
Nicholas spoke with such strong and raw emotion. He shared personal stories, showing a continued and real connection to the land for his people, a connection that remains strong to this day.
And so I was cleaning fish by myself. I was all alone. And holding this sockeye in my hands, and that fish, the spirit of that fish spoke to me and he said, my ancestors fed your ancestors, and I'm happy to feed you and your family. And that's a real story. It's That's not make-believe. That's not made up. That's not something I read in a book. That's not something that my ancestors told me. It's my story. That's a real story. That connection that Bonnet's talking about is alive and real. It's not something that was a has-been or used to be. It's real and it's alive today. Our connection to the land is real.
It was important for the band to not only demonstrate their connection to the land, but to also reinforce their rightful ownership through a historical context, as well as highlight the challenges they have faced since contact. In the 1880s, Chief David Spinklam, who was known as the chief of the entire Nakamook Nation, described their territory to ethnographer James Tate, which was presented to the board.
One post up the Fraser at Fountain, one down the Fraser at Spuzzum, one up the Thompson River at Ashcroft, one up the Nicola River at Colshana, one down the Similkameen River at Choo Choo near Headley. All the country between these posts is my country and the lands of my people. At Lytton is my center post. It is the middle of my house, and I sit there.
While establishing their connection to the land and title and rights was an important message to the board, it was also really important to talk about the National Energy Board's process itself.
One of the things that I feel is really important to talk about is this National Energy Board process itself. The NEB has made restrictions on the content of our oral presentations. Obviously, you're aware of these restrictions. And the National Energy Board also states that the argument portion of our submissions can be made in written statements. But I believe that if we want, we can make those arguments here. I mean, we are an oral people. Another issue with the NEB process is the lack of natural justice and procedural fairness afforded to all the participants. The reason I say this is because, one, we can be cross-examined by the proponent since I'm giving oral evidence. However, Kinder Morgan, the proponent, isn't orally cross-examined. This wasn't the case in the National Energy Board hearings pertaining to the Northern Gateway Pipeline. To have an impartial hearing, it's important that evidence is tested. A study was released by Simon Fraser University Center for Public Policy research teamed with the Goodman Group, a consulting organization. The report states that Kinder Morgan, TransMountain, is overplaying the economic benefits and downplaying the costs of its proposed TransMountain pipeline expansion. How can the National Energy Board make an unbiased decision when one takes Kinder Morgan's information at face value? When one can assume they have skewed their information so they can get the project's approval?
Elder Vonnet spoke with strength and courage, addressing Kinder Morgan's lawyers directly towards the end of the hearing.
I speak for my grandchildren, for my children, for my people. And I really do hope in my heart that you people listen.
Councillor Nicholas, speaking with passion and honesty, ended the LNIB presentation, reminding the board just how real the band's connection to the land is, and perhaps hinting a little further at just who the real decision makers and keepers of the land are.
Our connection to the land is real. It's a living, real thing. It's not a, once again, I said it earlier, but it's not a has-been. It's not a used to be. It's not a once was. It's an is. I've got my young children there. I've got a 10-year-old daughter back there who probably knows more plants than you guys.